Oh, I did it. Guys. I successfully got us in here. Welcome, everybody. We got a great showdown here. My boy Matty knows where the G spot is. GAJEWSKI is here for all the expert analysis and the great projections and stuff like that. I'm here to not be biased at all. At all. Okay? So, wait, Matt, can I hear you? Are you good to go?
Yeah, man. I haven't said anything yet. What's going on?
Perfect. How you doing? Tell me about your week. Did you have all the Cowboys, Jags, and did you fade the Chargers this weekend?
I had a decent NFL day. Didn't put all the pieces together, though, so no shippers, but it was profitable. College football was even better, though, going back to the Saturday slate and just running through the gauntlet of showdowns. That was a ton of fun. But, hey, man, we get midday? We get midday action between Marshall and Uconn. We're going to get midday football through most of this week. We were talking before the show. They probably could have done a 10K to first because we're on the second and third run of tournament. So, hopefully, the next couple of days, we actually get some good prize pools.
Yeah, I mean, I would have killed for a 10K to first Marshall slate. I got in as much as I could for the 5K before it filled. And I got into some of the secondary, and it seems like, I mean, even the high dollar stuff was pretty solid, to be honest. The single entry stuff was like 2K to first for the 180, stuff like that. But, I mean, it's 2:30 on a Monday, and people still had that World Cup hangover where they want action. Like, they need that 2 o'clock midday action. So, I'm excited for it. And I want to throw in, I want to talk about some bets and props because I don't know how much time you have, but the next show's not till 2. I know we won't get that far, but I do want to talk about some of the props because there was some weird stuff going on today with the anytime touchdowns for the Marshall running backs. Don't know if you saw the insane live movement on FanDuel, but I took advantage of that. Have you looked at any of the props or anything for this?
Yeah, I've been looking at props. I think you're talking about Kalen Laybourne and Rashina Lee, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're having a really hard time projecting these guys. Like across the industry, you saw some pretty wide gaps. Like some books just took the really easy approach. Like we're just going to project them the exact same. Prize Picks had them both at 87.5 rushing yards. But sounds like you were smart and you took advantage of some of this earlier today. I'm in Wisconsin, so very limited books up here. But what'd you get?
So I woke up. I knew they would wait to post it. And I saw Laybourne plus money to score a touchdown today. I was like, what? Against UConn's defense, almost the Sun Belt Player of the Year, who Dick Notre Dame, at Notre Dame, is plus 115. I was like, yeah, give me that. So I put second or third largest bet of the year on that. And then for him to score two touchdowns should be like plus 380 or something like that, right? Plus 650. I'm like,
man, those are max bets, smash bets.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not a lock to get 2 touchdowns, especially with the 50-50 split, which I'm assuming it will be. You're not just going to be like, okay, Ali, it's your show. You're coming off a torn ACL or whatever he did to his knee. And we're just like, no, it's going to be a 50-50 split. And I think they're going to try to get both guys in the end zone, but plus 650, that's just a value bet, and you just take it. So I got absolutely. Those. And then I tweeted as soon as I could. And then I think 30, I'm not sure. I don't have this much influence, but I'm sure other people caught on, woke up and saw this as well. And the people who bet a lot of money changed that line very fast. And I think an hour later, it was down to minus 155 for Laybourne to score, and 2 touchdowns was plus 380 where it should have been. And there were people who bet a large amount of money that I know who can cash out for like $1,000 profit on their 5K bet for Laybourne to score anytime. So, or something like that. And they scored twice. But yeah, so you had a great opportunity to max out and just make a profit now but yeah, just a weird line movement. And then finally, they're both settled into minus 170 to score anytime, which is a lot more accurate. And I assume where you think it's where it should be as well. But did you not take advantage of any of that? Did you get anything?
No, dude, I'm in Wisconsin. I can't get any of it. All I can get is Prize Picks, and I can go to the shady offshore books, but they don't have lines like this.
Yeah, exactly.
And on Prize Picks, they took the stance right from the start. We're just giving these guys the 50-50 straight down the line treatment. They were both at 87.5 rushing yards right from the get-go. So, no, man. This state, man.
That's horrible. We'll see now. Yeah, on FanDuel, I'm only getting – oh, by the way, everyone smash that like button over at RPS. Come sign up. Matt, you can talk about your stuff later, and I'll talk about – I'm going to not much promo on this one because I'm just so excited to watch Marshall football again for the last time this year. So, I'm sorry to the higher powers above at RPS. It's my fault. Anyways, yeah, smash the like button, though. I will say they're only offering me Ali for the rushing yards on FanDuel. It's kind of sad. I kind of wanted to hammer both for like 70-plus yards, something like that, because that's kind of where you attack this Uconn team. Matt, what do you think as far as point spread, over, under? What are you leaning on here?
I like Marshall right from the get-go here, but we're talking about 2 teams that are pretty similar to each other in terms of how they're made up. 2 power run teams. Both decent defenses. I think Marshall has the advantage there. Like across the board, advanced metrics, they're 29th in run defense, 7th in pass rush, 10th in coverage. That's going to neutralize the Uconn offensive line, which is by far the strength of their team. That's why they've had success running the ball. But then on the other side, a mismatch here for sure is just Marshall, what they can do on the ground with Ali and Laybourne against the 97th ranked run defense in the country. That is Uconn's defense. So I think it's a mismatch. But again, the total is only 40.5, 41 in some spots. At what point does it become too many points? If I were betting this right now, I'm seeing some plus 12s. I think I would go Uconn just as a value bet. But overall, I think Marshall rolls here.
Yeah, I think we could. But I mean, just with the first, like, we've only had Ali and Laybourne healthy one time this year, like once or twice. And it's just like, that is a scary duo that can just grind you down. Not to mention like the improvement of Cam Fancher just from game by game. The freshman is just getting better, more confident. It just seems like everything's clicking at the right time for us. But I mean, Uconn, I've seen some of the players talk about it to the media. Like, this is a big deal for them. Having a winning season for them is massive. Being here is massive. The fact that the last time they were in a bowl, they were beat by this Marshall team. They want this. And half the time in this bowl shit, it's motivation. You know what I'm saying? And this team is motivated. This isn't just a regular game for them. This actually means a lot to them. And you can't really say that about some of these bowl games, which I'm sorry. I know every player's going to try, but it's motivation for this. And so I'm torn. I don't really like betting that high a number, so I'm just doing straight up alternate spreads, betting Marshall to route them. I'm not messing with like the -2. I want to get plus odds on something when I am betting them. And the over-under is just, I don't know. The Marshall doesn't like to get in these high-scoring games because obviously they run the ball every time. That makes the clock run down a lot. You know, it's kind of like Bills in Miami the other day. When you pass that much, it seems like the game lasts forever. And it's nice for everything you bet. So this game kind of the opposite. I think both teams are going to pass a lot. Both quarterbacks can run. That takes more time off the clock. So I'm not messing with the over-under, but I do want touchdowns for those prop bets. Now,
my favorite prop is actually Fancher over 37.5 rushing yards. That I can get on Prize Picks and parlay that with some college basketball stuff. But if you're on your more traditional books, I've seen that available. I think that's a value. He's been over 60, I think, in 4 straight games now.
Yeah, it seems like some games he's like either all gung-ho about running, and then some games he's like, yeah, I'm not running today. But yeah, I love the rushing touchdown props for him, too. It was like pretty decent odds, too. So I'm with you on that. I don't know what UConn's given up as far as rushing quarterbacks. So do you have that?
They do not have a good pass rush. So their defensive line is actually really suspect. The 97th in run defense, 103rd in pass rush. It's going to create a lot of lanes for Fancher as long as they don't come out with a completely vanilla game plan. But I don't think they will. This is really meaningful, I think, to both teams here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like we had the bowl streak for so long, so it does mean it's a lot to us too. And I don't think we've won a bowl under Huff yet. I don't think we were eligible last year, but I don't know. I can't remember. Sorry, I have CTE. Too much time getting hit in the head and playing football. But all right. The weight has came. It's time to talk about these contests that are surprisingly decent. Let's talk about our DraftKings builds. We'll start at the very tippity top. Laybourne 12K, Gamage, Turner. Let's talk about captains. What are you looking at for your captains here?
I think you're really narrowing it down to 3 guys. And we were talking about this a lot before the show, trying to figure out who we think most of the people are going to play. You have Laybourne at that expensive price tag. $18K in the captain spot is enormous. And then you have Fancher kind of as your middling guy playing quarterback. He's, I think, the streakiest of the 3, just the way he plays. He's more of a running-based quarterback, but they have 2 power runners, so they don't always need to use him, leading to some highs and some lows. And then you have Rasheen Ali, really cheap. He's kind of the captain that allows you to jam in every single stud in your lineup. The problem I was running into is that there's just not that many studs. So when I was playing Rasheen Ali at captain, I'm getting lineups that have like 3K on the table, 4K on the table, like sometimes even 5K on the table. And that's just because there's so many value plays. We're going to dive into every position, so we'll talk about who they are. But salary is not an issue on this slate. I think you can get away with playing all 3 of these guys at captain if you're playing multiple. But honestly, like, at what point does Laybourne come in under-owned at his price? And I think that's an interesting conversation to have. Exactly.
Like we're talking about the show, like, here's how I think it will break down. People are going to be like, oh, Ali, way too cheap. Let's slide him into captain. They realize, oh, I'm leaving too much salary. People don't really like leaving salary. It irks them. And then especially the people that are probably playing at 2:30 slate today, they're just like, oh, throw something in real quick. I'm on a lunch break. They would not want to leave salary. So they'll be like, okay, well, I'll go up to Laybourne. And they're like, oh, well, okay, never mind. This is probably, I want more. I want more value. And then I think the hand builders are going to kind of settle on Cam Fancher so they don't leave salary. They get everything they want. And what's funny is that's what the optos are giving you right now for probably the same reason. They think, okay, well, Ali's in a split. Labor's with a split. Let me just get Fancher. He's the favorite quarterback, which makes sense, which I think leaves us like leverage for basically everyone else, like the Ali where you leave salary, getting labored and kind of just not taking one of the studs for UConn. They have some guys coming back we'll talk about later, which maybe it kind of murks up stuff a little bit. So that's kind of how I'm trying to see where the ownership is, and that's where we're at. Now, let's talk about contrarian captains because, like you said, there are only 3, but I'm entering a lot. I know you're probably sticking with your tier 3, but if you wanted to get weird, who would be the weirdest guy that you would captain that just be under-owned at the spot?
I think I'll probably get a little weird here, but I mean, when you look at just across the board, once you get beyond those 3, the next closest player is GAJEWSKI. And I think he's going to be extremely under-owned. He's more expensive than Fancher. The role is way less secure. This is the wide receiver 1 for Marshall. And it hasn't been consistent. We've seen other games where Charles Montgomery will pop up. We've even seen some games where Horton scores the touchdown and has some productivity. So I think GAJEWSKI is the guy I would rank number 4. We'll talk about some players on the Uconn side, but it's just very hard to captain anyone over there as big underdogs. You have a quarterback who's the pure definition of a game manager. Doesn't really run, and he hasn't thrown for 200 yards in a single game yet this year. And then there is a complete musical chairs at receiver due to some injury stuff we'll also dig into. So I'm finding it personally really hard to captain UConn guys and pretty easy to captain these Marshall 3 and then just moving it down the board to GAJEWSKI and Montgomery if you're playing like the massive tournament they have at, I believe it's the $10 level.
Yeah, I like that. And as soon as you turn on the game today, like for those who've not watched a Marshall game, you're going to see Corey GAJEWSKI. You're going to be like, oh my God, why did I not captain this guy in at least one? He is just a straight up physical specimen. The only problem is Marshall is always kind of inconsistent about, we haven't had a consistent receiver who we target every game as part of the game plan every week and quite some time. So it's kind of just like up and down. And obviously you can tell by the targets the past 3 or 4 weeks, it's kind of like, but the guy is a big play waiting to happen. He just is a freak athlete, could get 2 bombs in this game. And I wouldn't really be surprised. But Marshall wants to run the ball, so therefore it's definitely going to make a contrary option. He's going to be so low owned at captain, so I definitely will take a stab. But I like that. Mine would probably be just going that one crazy route of UConn actually winning this game and going someone like just Turner, the most consistent receiver if you had to pick. I think the wide receiver 2 and stuff like that is where it gets tricky with UConn with some of the guys coming back. I think Turner's role is solid. And there's a couple other guys I like, but I guess Turner would be my YOLO captain. That's not Fancher or anyone else, but I am with you on the GAJEWSKI thing. So let's break down the Marshall passing game. We just talked about 2 of them, but let's talk about Horton. Let's talk about if Keaton randomly plays. What are you doing with that?
Yeah, that's something we need to watch. Keaton hasn't really had his status updated since November. He's missed multiple games in a row here. At least their last 4 is the sample I'm looking at. Hasn't played in any of them. But he was previously functioning as essentially the wide receiver 2 in the offense. I would be surprised if he plays, but again, we just need to look for that confirmation. Without him, the 2 has been Charles Montgomery, and he's taken on a pretty large role down the stretch. Over the last 4 games, he's seen ascending targets. In their 4th most recent game, 4 targets. Then he had 5. Then he had 6, and that all culminated in a 10-target game in the most recent contest. Almost every single route run, you're going to see that for both GAJEWSKI and Montgomery here. The problem is, like, if you captain Montgomery, you're running into the same issues as Rasheen Ali. You're going to play essentially the same guys as everyone else because there's so much value on the slate. So, like, if you captain Montgomery, you'll have no issue getting Ali, Laybourne, GAJEWSKI, Fancher, and then probably just your UConn of choice. So I think that's something to be careful with. But, in a vacuum, if you're playing one lineup, it's hard to envision not having Montgomery. He's just been so locked in. Yeah,
and they have a lot of gadget plays and stuff set up for him too. So he has a lot of design plays, which GAJEWSKI really doesn't have that. Like Mike Montgomery will come in motion. He'll do that little thing in the flat where you find him you see it's in man, you dump it off to him. He can kind of make a play. The freshman has been really impressive. I really like him, and this is just a misprice. It's kind of like I like the FanDuel pricing a little more. I know no one gives a shit about FanDuel. Probably gonna get made fun of for even mentioning it.
I like FanDuel. They just don't have as much available today.
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah, the $9 500 to first to main, baby. Yeah. That'll buy me a nice steak dinner. Fuck. Anyways, yeah. So I like Montgomery. All these, he might even be honestly if Keaton's out with the target share and stuff. Montgomery is probably safer than Gamage. It's just probably less of a ceiling. And instead of capping him, like you mentioned, I'm just going. I think I bet him 2 touchdowns. I can't remember what the odds were, but I was like, okay, if he's break the slate, I want to at least have this bet in my back pocket. So I did Montgomery to score twice. I think that's the only way he truly breaks it.
Yeah, it's crazy. Just from like a back end perspective, when I ran the optimizer, I ran projections around the industry just to give you guys an idea what other people might play. And you very rarely see this. It's essentially 5 Marshall players over 70%, rotating in and out of captain. That's Laybourne, Montgomery, Ali, Gamage, and Fancher. And then the last spot is just basically one lineup here of a Uconn player, another lineup here of a Uconn player, a couple of Uconn players. Like it looks like it's going to be mostly those 5 Marshall guys and then 1 Uconn player. So even if you got different at one position with a Marshall guy, like let's say you swap out Charles Montgomery for EJ Horton, I think that's going to make you like pretty significantly different today. And EJ Horton's had a pretty good role here too with Talik Keaton out. He's at 2,700, at least 3 targets in each of the last 4 games. And he had 8 targets in one of those games. So he's had a pretty decent role. And he would just be like your straight up leverage play. Like I just want to play one guy who's different. I think he makes some sense.
I like that. And it looks like Caleb McMillan is also prepared to play. I don't know if Draftkings thing is active or up to date, but it says he's prepared to play. He's kind of another pivot down there, my less favorite one. But like I said, you're going to have a lot of chalky builds like Matt just mentioned. So McMillan's down there, 1,800. I mean, like I said, we kind of get stretched thin here. Anything can happen. The guy falls in the end zone. He changes the slate and probably outscores Horton and Montgomery. So what's McMillan's route ran and all that stuff when he was active?
It's pretty bad, but when they actually have him on the field, it seems like he's a guy they put out there with a plan in mind. So maybe you could speak to his skill set as, you know, you watch a lot more games here. But over the last 2 games, McMillan's routes run were 46% and 41. So it's pretty far behind Horton, but you know, like when he's out there, there seems to be a plan for him. If you could speak to that.
Yeah. So actually the 2 or 3 games I've been to this year, he was not been active. The first game of the year, I didn't really see much. I was at that game, but the chunk in the middle, I didn't see him. So I have not seen him that much. So the one I've been most impressed with is Montgomery. McMillan's not really stood out that much, but you have the data. It says he's got a plan when he comes in. That's all we really need for GPPs, especially if, as far as touchdowns, if you have a design play for a guy, he can house it at any moment. So just another pivot, not a priority play. Now, the very tricky part. Let's talk this Uconn team because I want to mention they got a running back coming back. I don't think he'll be involved. His name starts with a B. What was
Brian
it?
Bruton.
Brian Bruton.
They usually use him as a kick returner. I don't think he gets more than like a handful of snaps.
Okay, so that's not really well. I mean, in a 3-headed backfield, if he does get 5 snaps, it's like, well, that's 5 less. So it's paying the ass. But can you break down the 3 main guys as far as the goal line back Burns and then other guys?
Yeah, that's the thing we need to mention here. UConn uses a lot of weird personnel packages. They kind of just have a weird offense. You know, they've been really, really hampered by injuries. So this is something that I think could affect even their player personnel. But they've used a fullback a lot. And that's something that a lot of teams aren't going to use this day and age. But as we'll talk about, they've had, I think it's 4 major injuries at receiver. Like 4 guys that were slated to start at various points have been out for the year. They've had tight end injuries. So it's kind of forced them into this like power run heavy scheme, which kind of works in their favor because the strength of the offense is their offensive line regardless. But a lot of times you're going to see Robert Burns on the field at the same time with another one of these backs. They will use him as a fullback. You mentioned he's a big goal line back. He's carried the ball at least 8 times in 4 straight games, double-digit carries in 3 of those 4. And he's big back. He is a very decent shot at the end zone, I think, here. He's the stone minimum. You just don't need a guy this cheap, so he's not going to pop in optimals because you're going to get a Lee instead in these other cheaper guys. But for a player that is going to be unowned, I have a lot of interest here. I think most of my lineups are going to be some combination of the 4 Marshall studs and then trying to mix and match the low-owned Uconns. Burns is involved there. From there, we've actually seen Victor Rosa playing ahead of Devontae Houston among the 2 like actual tailbacks. And this could ebb and flow a little bit here. Houston came off an injury, but Rosa has played really well in his time on the field himself. Very efficient. So I don't think this is going to be far from a 50-50 split. Houston's also expensive. So, you know, if you're trying to jam in the 4 studs on Marshall, it's kind of hard to hit Houston here, but it's pretty easy to get Rosa. I think Rosa's far more owned, but ultimately this is probably close to a 50-50 timeshare.
Yes, me and my buddy were talking about how just the overpriced Houston will be the one that falls in the end zone, just tilt everyone's face off. But I mean, obviously Rosa is the way better play of all these guys, point per value, just everything, roll, which is all kind of even. But like, if you throw in the price, Rosa's the best play of all these guys. But I mean, Houston had a 75-yarder against Southern Miss. I think it was against Southern Miss. I think he had a 19-yard game winner against Fresno. So it's like, I mean, I know Marshall's defense is amazing, so they've held it like. It feels like every game it's like a 2-yard per carry for the opponent. But these guys just fall in the end zone and it kind of changes everything. So I probably will have a little bit of Houston, but Rosas, way better play. And to speak to that, if you paid both, the running defense is good, but when you get on the goal line, like what if Burns is this guy, they get him down here and then Burns just like botches the touchdown. It's like, okay, well shit. So I honestly do have interest in the Burns 1K and then like the 4-2 build you mentioned and have like Turner with Burns. Burns falls in the end zone. Turner just PPR racks up points. I actually did fall in some 3-3 Uconns. Didn't feel great. It's probably definitely going to be a 4-2 Marshall day. But that 3-3 where they stay competitive, you can kind of get some value there. Let's talk about these receivers now. We have, like I mentioned, kind of like the same deal with the Uconn running back starts with a B. Same deal with Cam Ross, except a little bit different because he was the number one receiver coming into the year. 2019, he was one of their leading receivers. Had like 800 yards, was a great freshman, broke his foot the next year and like after the second game. And then this year breaks his other foot in training camp as he was about to be the number one receiver in this offense. I think he played like last month. He returned a couple punts in a game, but wasn't fully healthy. Apparently he is fully healthy, ready to go here. We don't know what the stats will be, but talented guy that could also murk up that receiving situation there. And not to mention what's the other guy's name? Keelan?
Aaron Turner?
Marion. Keelan
Marion. Marion, the injured guy.
Yeah, so another talented guy who had 7 touchdowns for them last year. Not a big yards guy, more of a touchdown guy. 5 targets in his first game against Utah State, gets hurt. 5 targets last week in his return. Another murky situation. So talk about the other top guys, the more safer guys, and then talk about what you're doing with the injured dudes who are coming back.
Yeah, this is the craziest thing with UConn, and that's why I think maybe they don't use as much Bruton today. I'm not saying they won't, but we just flat out don't know. They at least have more options, we'll say that, because they're getting back a lot of players that were expected to play pivotal roles. To your point on Cam Ross, like, feel so bad for this guy. Gets the COVID season and the 2 injuries. Hasn't played really since 2019, where he was a stud on a much worse UConn team. So it's kind of the thought, what could have been if Cam Ross was healthy all year for this team? And how much do they want to get him active and acclimated? Because he's essentially been practicing for a month and a half now, but they haven't felt the need to get him on the field. I think this kind of might be the last run for him. So maybe you see some stuff, but I would be surprised, honestly, if he plays above the top 3 guys. That's Aaron Turner, Kevin Sclercius, and then they showed a willingness to at least play Keelan Marion right away, like coming off the injury, in a near full-time role, 67% of the routes. I would expect that to only rise. So I think Cam Ross still might get left out a little bit, but we're dealing with dicey, uncertain situations. We have no idea what UConn's going to do. And maybe they truly do just want to get him out there for like a last hurrah after the injuries have derailed his last 3 years. I'm still going to prioritize this. I think number 1, Keelan Marion due to price. Number 2, Aaron Turner, because of the pedigree he's shown all year. He's the team's leading receiver. And then Sclercius 3.
Wow. I love to hear that because the amount of Marion anytime touchdown bets I have, I actually texted Tony. I was like, look, this is going to sound gross, but I got a UConn anytime touchdown bet. And he was like, oh, I don't want to take any of that. I'm like, look, it's plus 650. Keelan Marion plus 650. He is the touchdown guy, is he not?
He is.
So, I mean, plus 650. I know there's not many points to be scored, but I have way too much of the bet. I still think it's pretty decent value. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. It sounds like with these touchdown bets, you're hoping for an over.
They're not smart. They're really not. But most of them are just Marshall backs, and then like my only UConn guy was Marion. So it makes sense. But you're right. I do like the over. I'm almost positive it is not going to be an over game. But it's Marshall, so I had to dig out a little bit. I'm not saying all the bets are smart, but I think there is good value in some of them. So I will also have Ross just because, like you said, I mean, it's the bowl game. I could just be this like a poetic kind of wrap the bow on the season and come back next season with their quarterback who should come back healthy, the 4-star guy who looked amazing against Utah State. First touchdown drive, drives him right down in Utah State, scores a rushing touchdown, next drive breaks his foot or tears his ACL. I mean, this team's only going to get better next year, so maybe they keep kind of Ross, like a last hoop raw going into next season. I could see it. We are probably going to get an update on that because UConn's beat writer is like really up to date on stuff, and he's tweeting everything, tweeting what he's eating in Myrtle. I imagine he'll tweet the guys in warm-up, stuff like that. Much needed. As for Marshall, they keep everything very tight-lipped. I've tried the DM, players, reporters. I'm annoying everybody, but Marshall keeps everything so close to the chest. So not the same scenario for them as far as if we see Keaton play and stuff like that. I would honestly rank the receivers exactly how Matt did, with Marion being my favorite guy to kind of sneak in the end zone. And then the tight end, Jolly, not great value, but, I mean, he does have 2 touchdowns this year, I believe. What's his route share?
It's right up there with the receivers. They don't really rotate other guys. It's not quite to the same degree, but we're looking like high 70s most games. So I think he's a distant 4th just because he doesn't get targeted as much.
Now, what about in the games
out there? Like, he's certainly in play.
What about the games where they've gone down? Like, been his role there? I mean, I've seen the targets. The targets haven't gone up, but have they had a game where they've really been trailing?
Yeah, his routes are consistent.
And it still doesn't matter. Damn. I wish they'd freaking target that guy. I probably would have him just in case he just, like, tilts me with a touchdown, but I'm also entering a lot. I would not have him in 1 or a 3 max, to be honest. Talking kickers here. I don't like the Marshall kicker, but
he seems okay. You don't like him?
I don't know. They do kick it a lot, but like he doesn't have any range at all. I mean, from what I've seen, he missed one when I was there, and I've just been tilting ever since. I think he has a lot more volume, and we'll get a lot more chances to kick in this game. But I want that 50-yarder if I'm playing a kicker. And Rulas is 1 for 2 this year in 50-yarders. I think it was a 54-yarder. He banged it. So I don't know. I'd rather just have that. And I think they stall out a lot more than Marshall. At least I'm hoping so. Are you going to be mixing and matching these kickers, or are you kind of Xing them out?
So I think the kickers are going to be unowned entirely. That's just because you have such good value plays. But I do think Rulas for Uconn is a better kicker overall, but I don't think he's going to be kicking as much. So yeah. Honestly, if you're running 3 max today, if you're playing a couple lineups, even if you're playing just 20, I think you're probably best just to X these guys out and then try to get leverage with Horton or McMillan or one of the cheaper Uconn backs or something like that, rather than play a kicker. Just because I don't know how many times Uconn scores, and then I think Marshall's kicker is okay, but he has been pretty shaky this year. So it's not like NFL where these guys you can guarantee most of their kicks goes in. Like a lot of these kickers, man, like you're going to see some brutal kicks in bowl season.
Yeah, I mean it's like if you get 50%, it's like, oh, okay, we'll take that, and they're happy with it. What else is there really to discuss? I mean, I guess
what are you doing with Zion?
Oh, I'm actually overweight on him. What is he coming up in optos and stuff like that?
He comes up a lot just because you have the salary to get to him.
I mean, the pass rush. The pass rush for Marshall has been elite. I think that'll kind of make him get out of the pocket more. And the Coastal quarterback, who's not really much of a scrambler. I know Turner's a lot better scrambler than the Coastal guy. What's his name? Starts with an M. McCall. Yeah. So I think Turner's going to have to run a little bit. I really like his rushing prop, to be honest. It's like 12.5. I know he will take some sacks, which I hate that rule, Matt. We've got to change that rule, bro. We've got to change the sack rule.
I think it's not because like DK or anything wants to do it. Just
no.
ESPN and the stat providers, for whatever reason, it's easier for them. So they just include it because of that, which it sucks for us.
And I know that the fact that Marshall's a good pass rush and he's going to get sacked, that's definitely accounted in the 12.5 prop. But I think he can get out and scramble a little bit. I know McCall did against us. He even had a rushing touchdown. I like him. I think he's going to have to be at pass. He's going to throw some picks, but I mean, who really do they have behind him? He's the second string guy. I do not think the backup is much better. So I will be having him in a lot more than what I should. Because the thing is, I would rather have him in a pass catcher than 2 pass catchers. I'm not too confident in the 2 pass catchers to get all the volume. So I'd rather just
with the injuries. I don't know how you would be.
Exactly. But in this 3 build, I do have Turner, one of the running backs, and a pass catcher. I actually like the 3 build here today. I know I'm a Marshall fan, Marshall alum, but the 3 build, I think it's going to be under-owned. I think that there's a chance that all the Marshall volume comes from like 1, 2 guys, and then the third just kind of gets you there. Whereas Uconn playing the trailing script could kind of rack up some points. Are you just going all 4-2 and just saying, screw it?
I'm building right now. I'm starting with my 4-2s, and then I'm going to branch out from there. In my 4-2s, I'm just trying to be smart about who I play from the Uconn. But I think automatically if you go 3-3, you're not going to have to worry about anything else. You can basically play whoever you think the best plays are.
Yeah, you can put. That's what I did. Like I played the absolute stone chalk with the 3-3, and I just don't think it won't be nearly as deep as some of the other stuff because everyone's going to do 4-2. Everyone's going to do 4-1 or 5-1. That's kind of where I'm landing here. I don't have anything else. If chat wants to ask some questions, you can fire away, and I'll see what these props are at now. Do you have anything else to add, Matt?
Yeah, ask away for sure. I wanted to ask you about the Marshall tight end. I don't think we hit him.
Devin Miller. God, what's crazy was we used to have so many design plays for tight ends, and like tight end was like a touchdown, just freaking machine for Marshall. Huff's kind of changed that a little bit where we get in the red zone, it's just run, and the tight end's just straight up blocking on everything. They not doing much. For Marshall tight end to only have one touchdown is absolutely insane. Now, the threat of the run being so insane, you can go there, but like it's not like he's like 1 or 2K, which I know pricing doesn't matter, but him being 4K, I just don't see it. If he gets a touchdown, I don't even think that's going to be enough because his best stat line would probably be 1 for 5 and a touchdown.
Yeah, I asked because he's a guy that's not going to be played whatsoever. I see someone bringing up Xavier Gaines in the chat. Miss Xavier Gaines.
Exactly. Gator Hoskins. Yeah. Legend. Like, awesome. Cody SLATE, freaking it wasn't much of a pass catcher, but Smith, who had a great NFL career. Just all kinds of like stud tight ends. Now we have Devin Miller. Poor guy can't get a freaking target to save his life. Watch, this will be the day he scores. But even then, like, I'm not even scared of it. Knock on wood.
Yeah, I bring him up because he's one of the few Marshall guys I think that's probably like single digits.
What do you think Horton's going to come in at?
15 to 20. Well, like too low for sure.
Still,
everybody's going to play Montgomery over him just straight up.
Yeah. I mean,
which makes sense. Like if you're playing cash or you're playing one lineup, I would do that myself. But if you're playing more than one, I think that's excellent leverage.
Yeah, I mean, if like Keaton somehow plays, Miller's 1 for 5 and a touchdown could outscore Montgomery because the targets are spread out. Montgomery doesn't get a ball in the end zone. He gets like 2 for 40, and then Miller's 6 is enough, and he's like 7%. I still won't play him, but I'm just talking about a scenario where he could get there. So that's what I'm doing. Guys, if we have any questions, favorite captain play. Matt, favorite captain play. Gun in your head.
For me, it's so one of my favorite things to do today is play Ali and then leave salary. Because you can essentially in this build, think about it. You can play whoever you want, and then to be contrarian, you're just leaving salary on the table, which you mentioned a lot of people don't like doing. I agree with that. I don't think enough people are going to do that today. And I think a lot of people, like to your point, are just going to play Laybourne and Fancher because they have the salary. Whereas if you play Ali, your lineups look a lot different, but that little number in the top right corner is just not quite as high.
Yeah. So here's another good question. So for me, I like that too. I'll go to this real quick. Early in the year, we had a showdown. We did the show for it on Spaces. And we had last second, we didn't get to talk about on the show, sadly, but the running back for whoever it was, App State, don't know who the hell it was ruled out. So no matter what you did, you had to leave salary, and people just couldn't do it. First of all, the news kind of came late, but even when the people who did play the backup running backs, they couldn't do it. So talk about, like, I love that build, but do you think today that'll change? Are people going to be like, screw it, I'm leaving it, Ollie's a stud, I can kind of do what I want? Or do you just think they'll just keep to themselves and just absolutely cannot do it?
I think it might be the opposite, because think about, like, you mentioned people at their lunch break.
Yeah.
Think about a person that's just playing college football because it's kind of on an island today. We have Monday Night Football, but if you're looking for any action, no World Cup, nothing like that, you're going to see Laybourne with 1,445 rush yards. You see Laybourne, 122 receiving yards. He averages 25.5 touches per game. Well, you need a little bit of context with that. That came during the time when Rasheen Ali was out. In their last 2 games where Rasheen Ali is back, Ali's actually out-touched Laybourne 34-30. So I think box score hunters and people not quite as familiar with the game might default to Laybourne, not just knowing the ins and outs of the sport. So I'm thinking maybe we get under-owned Ali comparatively, but ultimately this is just my guess. I'm curious what you think on that.
I agree. So I got on the Opto. I was like, I ran it. We got some good questions here. Guys, keep firing away. I will get to every question, I promise. But I was like, okay, I'm going to get Ali captain. It's going to be the optimal. And I get on there, and it's not. And I'm like, oh, baby. So just put those two together. The Optos aren't getting it that much. They're giving it, but not that much. And then you got the people, like you said, we'll just go game box hunting. They won't do it either. And I'm just like, oh, baby. I think that is the nuts. My main will be Ali captain, even though I have all these bets with Laburn. I'm playing both. But to kind of lead into that, I had a great question. Let me see if you can peep this. Where is it here? How about this one?
Where is it? I don't see it.
Look is it on your screen? Does it not come up?
Oh, find a fade Ali. There it is. Sorry, just a little delayed. Man, probably not.
Wouldn't you rather just, if you had to pick one to fade, wouldn't it just be Laburn?
Because of price, yes, I think so.
Yeah.
But I don't think I want to fade either.
Out of all your lineups, what's the percent will have 2 Marshall running backs?
Right now, it's 100%.
Same.
I'm still building. I need to build some more contrarian ones, but right now I have both of them.
Yeah, so my first 10 to 15 are always kind of like just the stock, nothing too crazy. And then I get crazy. Closer to lock with my next 10, 15, 20, 30. So I feel that. I'm the same way as you. Got 100%, and I think most of them are like 4-2, 3-3. Not done the 5-1 yet either.
To speak to that a little bit, because those Marshall guys are going to be so owned, I think you can make pivots elsewhere and not need to sacrifice the Marshall backs, who are by far the best guys to play.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'd rather just take sacrifice and just fade the receivers because, I mean, it's not like we're a big passing team, and literally all the touchdowns could be rushing touchdowns today. And all the long gains could be all long. The only, like, Uconn has a stud linebacker. Everything else is horrible. Their defense. Like, this guy is like an All-American borderline. Not All-American, but very close.
He's good.
He is so – what is his name?
I forget off the top of my head, too.
Like, damn, that guy is good as shit. Like I said, I watched the Utah State game early, and I think I've caught another game. Because my roommate up in D.C. for a little bit, he's moved now. But UConn alum, the fact that they play Marshall is kind of awesome. He's talked about him, so I've always wanted to tune in and root for them. I was so glad when we got matched up in this bowl. So I got some UConn knowledge a little bit, not as much as you do with seeing everything else. But stud linebacker can maybe make things a little bit difficult as far as getting long runs from Marshall, but it's to smash plays to just play the Marshall running backs. Now, let's talk FanDuel. Everything's filled. I want to go edit my stuff. Have you built on FanDuel yet?
Yeah, it's harder. The 3 most expensive players are the 3 players that should be the most expensive. You don't have Ali at like $4K there. He's $1,400.
Yes, I think.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, so I think maybe the question from Fading Ali was maybe a FanDuel question.
Oh, on FanDuel,
I'm not for sure, but I'm just guessing.
Yeah, there's more merit to it over there without a doubt. It's just a lot tighter.
So what are you doing? I mean, I'm fade. I think I like the fade one in that, and like one of my 3. I like the fade of one of the running backs. Are you just playing both still on FanDuel, even though they're both really expensive?
I'm only playing a couple lineups over there, so in most, yes. So I think the chalk build on there is going to be a Lee captain, Fancher, Laybourne, EJ Horton for salary savings, and then there's a slew of UConn players you can just mix and match for your last guy in to make it work. I think that's the chalk build. So if you fade one of the top 3, you're going to be very contrarian automatically.
Yeah, I like that. It's Marion 6,500. Like I said, he's a touchdown guy. We don't get points per reception over there, so I really like Marion more on FanDuel than I do DK. So that kind of wraps up the DK talk. I feel like that's a lot of DK talk for a show. On to the next one. We got double UConn receiver in a 4-2 or play quarterback and receiver.
I like quarterback and receiver tentatively, depending on how much you can.
That's the same thing I said earlier. I kept building. I was like, I don't know if I trust the 2 receivers, so I'll just take the rushing with Turner and make it work as far as salary goes. How much salary is too much salary? I always love this question because I feel like it's kind of slate dependent. I think I've left 4,200 on my most, but
I've got a greasy one, man. It's actually a good lineup too. I'll read it to you if you want.
Yeah, are you allowed to do that? If you're allowed to do that, shoot away. I have no idea. You would know more than me.
I don't know if I'm allowed to do it. We're gonna do it. Who cares?
It's college football. Who gives up? Let's do it.
Just don't copy it, people, please. Anyway, I'm actually playing this, so don't copy it. It's Rasheen Ali captain, so you're leaving a lot on the table there. Then it's Laybourne, Fancher, Gamage. So you have the 2 backs, the studs, quarterback and receiver. Then it's Victor Rosa, who's led the team in carries over the last 3 games, and Charles Montgomery, the second leading receiver for Marshall on the year. And that totals 42,800. So that is what? 78,000 on the table?
What was the last 2 pieces? The last 2.
So it's Ali captain, Laybourne, Gamage, Fancher, Victor Rosa, and Charles Montgomery.
Okay.
That leaves 72,000 on the table, I believe. Like, that's a good lineup because you have all 4 studs. Montgomery, the second leading receiver for Marshall, and Victor Rosa, the leading carry getter over the last 3 games. So I'm perfectly fine with that. I think if you leave anything above like $8,000, you're fine. I probably wouldn't go below that.
And it still looks good. Like, it's because Montgomery and Montgomery and Ali are just not priced correctly.
So just to reference you guys, I do the projections over at Stochastic. The optimal lineup has a different captain, but the lineup I just read you is within 1 point projected of the top lineup, and it leaves 72,000 on the table. Or 7,200, sorry.
I love that. Here's another good one. I kind of like talking about these fades. What do you like it to Captain Ali and fade Laburn or Captain Ali and utility Laburn?
I'm more likely to Captain Ali and utility Laburn. I think most of my lineups have that.
Here's something funny because this was 86.5 before we came on the show. Ali prop is 95.5.
Holy smokes.
It was 86.5 before we started the show, fellas. The line movement for this game, they don't know what the fuck to do they, Matt?
No, they don't.
It's hilarious. I mean, if you woke up this morning and just look at these props, oh my God, like I did, no big deal. I mean, you're just going to print money. And I'm loving it because this morning it was even lower. I don't even know what I got. I would have to log into my FanDuel, but it wasn't 86. It was something lower than 86. I want to say it was like 79 or some shit. I got that already for Ali. I wish they would post Laburns, but I don't know. So let's talk touchdowns, and then if we don't have any more questions, we will get out of here. I feel like we've had a pretty successful. I will lead you to touchdown props on FanDuel, Matt. We got Laburn Ali minus 170, minus 180. Rosas plus 125. I actually hate that.
I don't like that either.
At all. And then Gamage is 4th, plus 140. Don't love that either. I know he's a physical specimen, but there's not going to be much touchdowns here, so they're just going to run it when they get down there. Fancher plus 135, hate that. If I say something I hate that you like, let me know. Houston plus 200, don't like that. Turner plus 410 is where I start to kind of be like, okay, trailing script, I'm getting decent odds, like 4-1. What do you think about that?
I think that one's okay.
I don't like it much as much. I like the Barber one more. Marshall defense is plus 500. That's hilarious. Hell no. Burns plus 500 is the goal line back, but that's just not enough for me. Jolly plus 550. Charles Montgomery plus 500.
That's a lot for him. He gets a lot of targets. Like, he's, over the last 4 games, comparable to Gamage in targets. He's actually out-targeted him. That
might be my second favorite receiving prop is behind Marion touchdown. Is that plus 500 for Montgomery, especially if Keaton's out. McMillan plus 550, and that would make you think that Montgomery should be like plus 400, plus 300.
Absolutely.
Horton plus 600. Zion Turner plus 600. I don't mind that one if we have to get greasy.
Yeah, he rushes.
I'm almost to the end here. Marion, like I said, plus 650, like that. Tight end for Marshall, plus 600. Don't love that. Connecticut defense, plus 700. LOL. So I guess my favorite out of that would be, like I said, Marion before. I like Turner, trailing script, and Montgomery, plus 500. I think those are the best values we got.
Yeah, I like the Montgomery one.
Yeah. So, guys, no more questions. I think we're going to get out of here. We went 40 minutes on a sexy-ass Monday game. I can't wait. We will follow me and Matt. We'll try to get the information as far as who's warming up and shit like that. I will continue to DM everyone I can because that's just what I do. At Twitter, Curtain Call, KURTCAN. KURTANCALL. Sorry, dyslexic. Anyways, that's how you can follow me. Matt, where can they find you? Where can they find your content? Everything like that.
I'm on Twitter at Matt_GAJEWSKI. I'm doing everything college sports at Stochastic. You can find me there. I know we do a lot of collabs. We'll do a lot of collabs. Sure. College basketball ramping up. We're with Steve Boyden and cousin Fredo Gavin all the time. But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter for everything. Cool.
So we were supposed to have Bruce on the show. Bruce had to work. He forgot the midday game. But the playbook for this game, everything we just talked about, Bruce did it on the playbook. He had it done last night at runpuresports.com. Guys, before you head out, hit that like button. Give me and Matt the follow on Twitter so we can get you kind of who's warming up, what's going on. We can get every leverage. It's bowl season. You're going to have guys who just aren't warming up and are going to be 40% owned randomly because they're not in uniform. It is the absolute nuts. One of the biggest leverages in DFS. For Matt, for Kurt, for Run Pure, we're out of here, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck today.